Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Southwire Cars software. This webinar is brought to you by LiveLab Learning, which is a subsidiary of Academic Core. Academic Core is a wholly owned applied software company created to provide world-class training. My name is Rachel Grillo, and I am delighted to be your moderator today along with Roy Labradette. And throughout our presentation, we encourage you to interact with us by typing in questions and comments using the questions pane, and we'll be answering all your questions at the end of this presentation. And this webinar is being recorded. I think that was a question that somebody had asked us in the on the sign-up information, but this webinar is being recorded and it will be available to you online on our YouTube channel, and we will also send you an email following the webinar with a link to the recording as well. And if you haven't already, search for LiveLab Learning on Facebook and like our page to receive the latest information and special offers. When you visit our website, livelablearning.com, there's a complete schedule of our upcoming training. And I'd also like for you guys to take note of our upcoming webinars. We have our Fab Hangout for fabrication coming up on the 22nd. And then we also have our BIM 360 Hangout coming up in January, on January 14th. So keep your eyes peeled for those upcoming webinars. And we also have an event coming up for our folks in Seattle. We have a BIM and Beer. It's actually going to be tomorrow from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. at Hale Owls Brewery. So if you're in Seattle, we would love to see you guys there. And also, following the Q&A at the end of our webinar, we will be giving away a $25 Visa gift card. You must be present to win the gift card, so stick around towards the end, and we'll go ahead and announce that one too. And our speaker today has been working as an electrical designer in engineering offices for the past 35 years. He met Gerald Nessler, the inventor of the CARS software. CARS stands for Cable and Raceway Systems, in 2004, and has been a power user creating project deliverables primarily in the oil and gas industry for many years. He recently joined our applied software team as the Director of Services for the Construction Technology Group. He's got a wealth of knowledge and experience to get the most productivity out of the technology tools that we're presenting to you today. So please join me in welcoming today's speaker, Roy Labradette. Take it away, Roy.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. Well, honor to be here. As Rachel mentioned, I'm fairly new with applied software, and in fact, this is my first webinar. So I appreciate you being patient with me, and I'm welcoming all of our guests. I hope that you get a lot out of this. And as Rachel mentioned, please submit your questions. We will be addressing all of the questions at the end of the presentation. I'd like to start off by talking about how we work today. Now, we all are in different industries, and we have a lot of different work processes and procedures that we may follow. But in its most basic sense, excuse me, electrical doesn't change that much. We all do basically the same thing. We collect information from other disciplines, whether it's from a P&ID or an equipment list, and we compile a load list to do our electrical analysis so that we can size our buses, size our transformers, and all of our electrical systems. We then take this information and we put it into a load list or a load study. We might use some additional software to help us with this. What we will then do is, after we've entered this information, a lot of times it gets entered in a spreadsheet, we'll pass that information on to our CAD department, and they will put the same information into our one-line diagrams or riser diagrams. If you do schematics and wiring diagrams, that same information is repeated again. We repeat it on our cable and conduit schedule, and we repeat the same information over and over again. The basic principle of the CARS software is we will enter the data once in any of the modules, and then that data will be shared across all of the modules. At the top of our little circle here is LoadMatic. That is the module that will do our load center design. It will create our load list, one-line diagrams, control schematics, and it will then feed the information into Cablematic so that we can build our cable schedule. Traymatic is our modeling module where we will design our raceway systems and locate our equipment. And then Cablematic will be able to be used to automatically route these cables. After the cables are routed, Cablematic feeds the information back into LoadMatic, where we will apply the voltage drop and make any cable size adjustments based on the voltage drop that we learn from the actual route lengths. Finally, all of this information can go to the field in Cablematic Builder so that the construction group has access to the same data as the engineering group, and we will also be able to collaborate on a fast-track project or keep up with our changes to the projects as construction goes on. This is the LoadMatic Network. Similar to a one-line system diagram, we will drag and drop components from the component palette onto the bus palette, and it will align the buses and create electrical connectivity between our buses. This information is then going to be fed into the next mod, the database, via a spreadsheet-like interface called DBView. We are going to put our load information and network information into this system very similar to what we would do to create our load list. So the same information that you're using now, that you're inputting now, such as the voltage, the load, whether it's in kVA for a static load or horsepower or kW for a motor load, the demand factor, number of phases, etc. This information will go into this window, and we will also assign an AutoCAD attributed block to each load so that the information can be used to build our one-line diagrams and control schematics. There's also a form that we can get information on each component in our bus network. Once we've populated this data, the CAR software will allow us to create loads lists, panel schedules, one-line diagrams, control diagrams. By building a 3D model in our Traymatic module, we will then be able to create the raceway diagrams, whether they are cable tray or conduit, also equipment location plans, instrument location plans, etc. Since it's all in the database, we'll be able to extract bills of materials, and we'll be able to create cable schedules. Later, within construction, we'll use it to create installation tickets, reel allocation, pole tickets, and cable and wire markers. This is a sample of the out-of-the-box load schedule. This load schedule uses an Excel template, and all of the loads are, each bus is created a load schedule in a separate worksheet in your Excel spreadsheet. These Excel spreadsheets are standalone. They can be saved and delivered as such, and these fields in the spreadsheet are customizable so that we can make them look exactly like the deliverables that you and your customers are accustomed to using. You can also do panel schedules. By assigning the circuit designation in the database and the load, the program will size the breaker and will help us to create our panel schedules. This will work with single-phase or three-phase panels, and it will work with any voltage level, really. I've done 120, 208 three-phase, 240, also done 480 volt panels and 277 volt lighting panels. Same information that we put into the load list is also going to go onto our one-line diagrams. These are attributed AutoCAD blocks. The program is going to take the load that we put in either as a circuit breaker load or as a motor starter, volt variable frequency drive, soft starters. It works with all of the different electrical devices, and we can use our attributed AutoCAD block to very quickly create custom one-line diagrams. The graphics that you see here are graphics that are provided with the software. The attributes are linked to the database so that you have complete control over the graphics, and the attributes are then populated by the database. Same information is again used to create our motor control schematics. Again, these are created very simply from templates, and we can modify our templates to have complete control of the graphics. This is a sample of a cable tray system that I actually designed on an offshore production platform. Offshore platforms are very tight. Real estate out there is very expensive, so it is quite often quite a feat to try to fit all of the systems in and also be able to avoid the interferences to the piping, structural, and mechanical disciplines as well. This project was actually originally modeled in PDMS. I extracted the PDMS raceway data and the equipment locations, brought it into a car's environment, and then completed the project in AutoCAD. Since we had more people that were familiar with AutoCAD, we could better use and leverage our human resources to get the productivity that we needed. What you're seeing here is actually a Revit model. We're able to use the CARS database to work either in AutoCAD or in Revit. So we could actually, we're simulating here, placing some equipment using the Revit interface. We could also work directly in Revit, design our raceways as many of you are doing currently, and the information from Revit then can flow into the CARS database, and we can use the features and functionality in CARS to route our cables and to do our material takeoffs. Before we can route cable, we have to have a cable specification. Conveniently, the Southwire cable catalog is provided and preloaded with the software, and there is a cable selection wizard that makes it very simple to apply and bring in Southwire cable information into the CARS environment. We're not limited to Southwire. You can load any cable manufacturer's data into the database. The Southwire stuff is very common and it's easy to use. It will also allow you to pull up the actual cut sheet so you can see exactly the specification that's being applied to your project. Routing cables is very simple. The program will use the XYZ coordinate of the origin and destination and then route the cable through the complete raceway. While it's doing this, it is checking for the NEC rules applying to tray fill and conduit fill. You're seeing actual time the algorithm running the cables. This particular project is one that I've used in my hands-on demos. Toward the end of the demo, I love to tell people, well, how long would it take you to route 500 cables? And you get various answers anywhere from a week to a month. And while we're having this conversation, this algorithm is running in the background. So as you can see, this is not sped up, by the way. This is real time. The algorithm does run this quickly, and we actually routed over 500 cables in a very short period of time. We also have some features and some functionality to help you with quickly estimating. What you're seeing here on the screen is actually the XYZ coordinates of many separate components. We can use our Cool Tools interface to get a list of those components and then tell the program to automatically route the cable and the conduit from point A to point B. This is quite helpful if you're doing general design and you need a quick estimate. I've also used this to do my final design where I put in the automatic routing and then brought it into Navisworks so I could take a look at the clashing and the interferences and then modify the conduit routes accordingly to make it work for that particular project. constraints. What we're seeing here is after we've routed the cables, we can actually have the program show us the route that it's taken through the raceway system. This screen is very interesting because in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see this project in an AutoCAD environment, and in the upper right-hand corner in a Navisworks environment. Because the database is where the information is held and where the graphics are generated, it doesn't really matter which CAD program I'm using. I can push that data out to either Revit or to AutoCAD. You can also use our interface to find specific information on a particular component or a particular raceway. For example, here we are selecting a raceway and identifying we selected a piece of equipment. We're going to identify the cables that are associated with that equipment and then show the route that those cables have actually taken to give you a visual representation. Just routed the cable, and now we can show the route. You can also collect information on any of your raceways or any of your equipment this way. You can find out the cable information. It's a very helpful, very powerful tool. Since we've done all of our cable routing and raceway system in a database, we can generate bills of material. The program will allow you to specify a cable tray manufacturer and get specific manufacturer catalog and part numbers. Same thing with the cables. This example is using B.I.M tray and Southwire cable. By the way, it will also work with individual single conductor cables routed in conduit, and we can color code those as well. Now, how many times has this happened to you? You go through a design criteria of we're going to use copper conductors, and you've done all of your work, you get down to the end, you've got your material takeoff, you've produced all of your deliverables, you're ready to issue the job, and someone does a cost analysis and says, we're going to have to find a way to save some money. What would the difference be if we were to use aluminum instead of copper? Well, that conversion is probably not all that challenging, except that your raceways are now need to be resized, your cable tray fill now needs to be recalculated, your aluminum conductors need to be resized based on the loads. With the CARS database, you can do this in a simple click and then just rerun all your reports. So it will give you a very good, quick way to analyze the difference between a copper project and an aluminum project. Southwire has a product that will calculate the pulling tension through our conduit system. This has been incorporated into the CARS software. So now we can get a report that will evaluate the various pull scenarios. It will look at the probability of a jam, which cables are contained in a particular raceway, the properties of the raceway, coefficients of friction, sidewall pressure, pulling tension, etc., and it will alert and highlight you to any potential problems. You can also take a look very quickly at reversing the pull, because a lot of times reversing the pull will actually reduce the pulling tension and allow you to make the installation. The program is going to allow us to create pull tickets for each cable, and then we can also create a termination report for each cable. or each set of conductors through a conduit if it's a wire and conduit job. These are able to be barcoded, and we are able to somewhat customize these. There are several different options of termination reports that are available to the design team or to the construction team. These could be done either in the office and then sent out to the field, or they could be actually printed out in the construction trailer. The program also will keep track of your inventory. We can assign cable pulls to reels to do pull planning well in advance and then keep track of the inventory. It allows you to keep track of when the reel was delivered, how much was the original length of the cables or conductors on that reel, how many have been pulled, how much of it is remaining on that reel, and the date that it was shipped and received. Our software is compatible with the Brady labeling system, so we can create wire markers and cable markers directly from our database, and that will ensure that the wire and cable markers are consistent with pull tickets and termination tickets. Revision control is always a challenge. By using the software both in the field and in the engineering office, we can report and control revisions. It will keep track of the cables, terminations, and raceways, whether it's been installed, what has not been installed, what is planned. If a change is coming up in the engineering office, we can alert the field and possibly prevent them from installing something that is possibly going to be revised. We get a wide variety of progress reports, the status of design, what's been completed, what's been remaining to be completed. So everyone on the project team will have complete knowledge of the status of our construction project as well. Here's a new feature that is not yet released. It will be, it's well along in this development. So I wanted to share this with you because it's something that's going to be coming up very soon in early 2016. Right now, we have a barrier between our one-line diagrams and our model. CAR's developers are working on removing that barrier. We've now been able to select, using this cool tool interface, select items on our one-line diagram and then zoom to those items in the 3D model. We can do this in a reverse too, by the way. We could select it in the model and zoom to it on the one line. We can review the cable routes. We can display the path that those cables are taking through the raceway system. We can edit data directly from this interface in the CAR's database. So in this case, I've got 4 pieces of equipment selected that are 2.8 kVA loads. Now, I know that this never happens that someone takes a guess at what the load is going to be early on in the project, and we get well on down the road where we've routed our cables, we've sized all of our conduits, sized all of our raceway systems, and then we get some vendor data or something that changes the load. So in order to simulate that, we're going to change these 4 loads to 100 kVA. And then go back to our one-line diagram. You can see that the cable size is a 3-conductor number 10 and 3/4 inch conduit when it was a 2.8 kVA load. When we implement this change, it will change that load to 100 kVA. It will also calculate and resize the cable and resize the conduit. Better yet, it will also resize the conduit in your Revit model. A little caveat to that, frequently we will make changes toward the end of a project and not realize the implications that it may have had. Here the program is warning us that when we made this change, we actually overloaded a couple of the buses that were providing power to those loads. Now that this barrier is removed, the one-line diagram and the 3D model are completely coordinated. We can exchange information back and forth between those two. As I said, this feature is not currently in the software, but it is in alpha testing at this point, and it will be released very, very early. We're very excited about this, and something I just wanted to share with you because I believe that there was also a question from our guest as to whether or not this was going to be possible. So we're very happy to announce that it is possible, and it's well along in the development. Okay, I'm going to hand it back over to Rachel, and we'll address any questions that you all may have.
I know we do have a couple questions from our audience. The first question I've got is from Charles Woodard. He says this seems to be inside electrical only. There's a lot more to electrical construction than waste raise, conduits, etc. I work with 69 kV to 500 kV. Will you be covering OH transmissions?
The answer to that is yes. The voltage level is not really relevant. We're going to build information into the database that is going to accommodate any voltage level. I have personally done some power distribution systems coming out of a substation feeding large plants, and have personally worked and used the software on a 69 kV system.
Okay, let's see. The next one I've got is from Brian. He says, what are the 3D objects being placed in Revit? Are these parametric families?
The 3D objects being placed in Revit will be families, and I'm going to admit right up front, I'm not a Revit guy yet. I've been working mostly in an AutoCAD and PDMS environment with software. Our Revit specialists are working with me, and I am working with them to incorporate as many of the Revit features and functionalities into the software as we possibly can. But as I understand it, that families are roughly equivalent to AutoCAD blocks, and we are able to work in the Revit environment with the families.
So maybe we'll have to do a little deeper research on the specific objects that are being placed from one of our Revit guys. We'll have to get back to you on a final answer on that one, Brian. So the next question I've got is from Ricky. He says, when the software automatically calculates the conduit and wire size based on updated load information, is this based on Revit calculations? Because Revit calculations do not always follow industry standards.
The calculations in cars are not done, we're not using the Revit calculations. They are done independently based on the build criteria as defined by the National Electrical Code.
Awesome. The next question I've got is from Karen. What is the cost for this software, network, and single computer? Is it a yearly subscription or a perpetual license?
The software is a yearly subscription. We no longer sell the perpetual licenses. There is a network version available, and it's actually a cloud license that can be used anywhere in the continental United States and Canada. At 10 seats or more, discounts start to kick in, and I'm going to ask you to coordinate the specifics with your sales rep for Applied Software. They'll be happy to give you a quote. We also offer training and implementation and support. So some of that can be incorporated into the initial agreements, and others are available as needed through your project timelines.
Awesome. So Karen, you might want to reach out to your sales rep for some more details on that. And if you don't have one, get in touch with me and I can track them down for you.
Hey Rachel, let me say one more thing.
Sure.
One of the things about the cost, I personally have done several projects, many projects using this software. The project that you saw with all of that cable tray on it was an offshore production platform. Now, as everyone knows, you get an original scope, schedule, and budget. And then as the project goes on, things are constantly changing. There are variances and cost overruns and changes that have to be incorporated into the design. That particular project was scheduled to have 10 people at the peak. I never had more than 4 people working on the project, and I came in on that particular project at 70% of my original electrical design drafting budget. And that included the variances and the changes and such. Also, I was able to meet each and every schedule deadline on that project with a very small team. So one of the things is this software is very cost effective because of the productivity levels that you're going to see and productivity improvements that you're going to see on your design team. We are able to take our high performing and some of our top employees and make them much more productive so we can get a lot more work done than we could previously. Now, one more thing. I don't know about you all, but my experience has been that days of these T&M contracts are mostly gone away. Everyone wants a lump sum turnkey contract or at least a fixed price contract to do quality engineering. By making your best and brightest employees more productive, it absolutely adds to the bottom line. So I am more than happy to work with you to show you exactly how much cost savings you can see on a short-term and long-term basis.
Awesome. Now we've got quite a few more questions on here, so I'll try to run through them as quickly as possible. The next one I've got is from Abe Morris. Is this capable of running coordination studies and short circuit analysis?
No, it's not. ETAP and SKM are the programs that I'm most familiar with that do that. We have an interface directly to ETAP where we can take whatever data you put into the CARS database, it exports to an Excel spreadsheet that can be imported directly into ETAP. We are working right now with SKM to develop an interface with SKM as well.
Awesome. The next one, do we offer a free trial of the software?
I'm going to again ask you to talk to your sales rep about that. Arrangements can be made, but what we will need to do is we will need to make sure that we arrange for training, because without the proper training, the software is very, very powerful, and that necessarily requires some upfront preparation for that.
All right, the next question is from Chris. How is the conduit routing done in respect to architecture, structural features of a building, and then how does this determine elevation to run the conduit?
Okay, there is a, let's see if I can get to it. 1 minute here. If I were to go try to automatically route a conduit and a cable, I can do it in one shot, and I set the elevation 2 ways. I can use a hard-coded elevation to say go up to 10 feet and route all of my cables and conduits at that level, or I could say at 7 feet, which would make it go 7 feet above the equipment. So you have various options, but that elevation is set right here. How does it interface with the other trades? That's a great question, and I'm going to answer that by saying, how are you interfacing with your other trades now? The way I normally would do this is use my, the way I would do that is use my Navisworks. Of course, I'm going to XREF in some backgrounds, whichever backgrounds are most convenient, so that I can get enough information to do my preliminary routing. But the heavy lifting is going to be done in Navisworks, where I can get a lot more information visually into the program, and I can also use the Clash functionality in Navisworks to clear all those interferences.
All right, the next question is from Bobby Renfro. If loads are added to a panel in Revit, does the BEM CARS software panel schedule update automatically?
if rows are added, if I understand it correctly, if, for example, you had 24 circuit panel and you needed a 30 or 36 circuit panel, there is a place in the software where you can add those extra data slots to the program. If the question is, do I need to add an additional circuit or two after things are already routed? Again, that interface is, if you're going to do it in Revit, the information would need to be exported and brought into the CARS environment. If you do it in CARS, then you can import it into Revit.
Okay. Our next question is from Bruce Johnson. Are there any tools for ArcFlash and other analysis we might use other software for?
Not really. As I said, we're going to interface with ETAP and SKM. I'm not certain of the ArcFlash capabilities of those packages, but CARS in and of itself does not support ArcFlash calculations.
Okay. Next question is from Darren Young. When the auto conduit routing takes place, can it detect architecture, structure, or other piping HVAC systems to avoid clashes?
Not automatically. And basically, I'm going to repeat the same answer. I typically will do what I'll call a preliminary or conceptual routing quickly in CARS and then bring it into a Navisworks environment to look at those clashes, and we can very easily modify the raceways, whether they were auto-routed or whether they were manually routed. The raceways can easily be modified after the fact.
Okay. Next one is from Chris. Is the software backwards compatible? Meaning, if used with Revit 2015, if finished in 2016, can it be opened at a later date in 2015? As we know, Revit is not backwards compatible. Do we have any issues with this?
Good question. I'm going to try to answer the question this way. The software is driving information from the database to a CAD system. That being said, if you model something in Revit and import it into CARS, theoretically, you then should be able to get an output from CARS either in an AutoCAD or a Revit environment, and I don't see why you would not be able to go to a previous version. In AutoCAD, I'm 100% sure that it's compatible with 2015, maybe 2016. I'm not sure if that's been released quite yet. And the database can then go back to AutoCAD 2010 or 2008 and output a DWG environment from the database. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. And then I've got a question from Julie Smith. What does CARS stand for? What's the full name of the software?
CARS stands as an acronym for Cable and Raceway System.
Awesome. And the BEM, B.I.M, that stands for Building Electrical Modeling. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so I've got two follow-up questions. From the first one, Charles Woodard asked the original question. This seems to be inside electrical only. Does it do? Will we be covering OH transmission? He followed up with, for OH electrical, we deal with lattice steel structures, tubular steel poles, wood poles. How does civil, structure, and mechanical get incorporated into the software when a conductor size is changed?
Well, that's a very good question. When I model equipment, I can use an AutoCAD 3D block and attach it to the XYZ coordinate that is held by the database. That coordinate then can be, that node can then associate with an AutoCAD block which associates with a specific set of bill of material. Now, if the question is, are we sizing the raceway, I believe that we can accommodate a raceway. I've not used it to do the specific things like you're saying, certainly not the power poles and the structure, but if there is a tubular raceway, I think that we can do that. I've used the program to do bus duct and cable bus, so while I haven't done it personally, I'd love to take a look at it, and I'm sure that we can accommodate that.
Okay, great. And Bobby Renfro had an updated question. I think we may have misunderstood. If we add loads to a panel schedule in Revit, such as like adding a load to a circuit or something like that, is that going to get automatically updated in CARS, or does it have to be the other way around? If a load is added to a panel in Revit.
If a new load is added to a panel in Revit, then we would be, and I am not familiar enough with Revit to understand 100% of how that part of it works, but I'll say in general terms, if there's something in a database, whether it's Revit or AutoCAD or Smart Plan Instrumentation or whatever, if there is a database that we as CARS can access information from that database, more than likely we will be able to import it. We certainly can import it from an Excel spreadsheet by copying and pasting, but if there is a consistent method of doing that, we should be able to program that. If it's not able to do it already, we should be able to program it to do that.
Okay, great. And then I know we've got a couple questions from folks about the cost of training and software details and everything. For those questions, because it can be a little specific to your company's situation, let's reach out to your local sales rep, and we can get some more details from our field specialists in that category. If you don't know who your field specialist is, get in touch with me and I can help track them down. My email address is Rachel, R-A-C-H-E-L, at ASTI.com. So if you want to get in touch with someone, just shoot me an email and I can help field that to the right person so we can get you all the additional details that you're looking for.
And let me say one more thing about training. Training is customized. We will take a look at a company and basically put together a custom training plan for your company that will be tailored to your specific industry and working with your specific deliverables. Also, and it's not available today, but we do have plans to implement an online training program that will be less specific but also less expensive. So don't let the cost of training scare you. Basically, the software and training costs are easily going to be recovered the first project you use the software on. And I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for listening and participating. I love to do live demos, so please get in touch with your sales reps, and let's get it on my calendar. Would love to take a look at some of your specific projects and specific deliverables, especially the overhead power line questions. I'm excited to work with you on that. I think that we can accommodate it. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and let's take a look at how we can help you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Again, if you need anything or if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me. My name is Rachel Grillo. My email address is rachel@asti.com, R-A-C-H-E-L, @ASTI.com. Thanks again, and have a great day.